First of all, welcome. Welcome and thank you for taking the time and focus to be here. We are so very close to seeing the Equal Rights Amendment in the United States Constitution. And I have been looking at all the names of the people that are signing up, and I know so many of you from years of working together. And I am really sad that I don't get to see your faces, but in my mind, I'm picturing you, and I have Zoe here to look at to represent all of us. So first of all, I want to tell you where I am. I'm here at the Publish ERA headquarters that Kati set up to give a space for us who wanted to be in DC, but frankly couldn't afford to be here if it weren't for her carving out this money to rent this big, beautiful house where we have a ton of space and a lot of activists and a lot of activities. So I want to really thank Vote Equality US, which is Kati's organization, and it was previously called VA Ratify ERA, and they were our partners in Virginia, and they kicked ass in Virginia, which is why we got the last state that we needed, Virginia, which we got in 2020. And we're very happy to have Kati here with us tonight, as well as legal experts and advisors. We have impact litigator and equal means equal attorney Wendy Murphy, and our legal advisor Arlaine Rockey, who's also one of our lawyers. They are both experts on the ERA, and they are going to be talking a great deal towards the end of the presentation here tonight. So I just want to start with telling you the good news, right? Let's start with the good news, and then we'll drift into the disturbing part of the evening. The good news is that we are having an effect. We are having a measurable effect. There can be no doubt that what we are doing is having an effect. Why? Because we have seen more articles in the mainstream media about the Equal Rights Amendment in the past 4 days than we've seen in the past 4 years. And, you know, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of storm and drang and, you know, gnashing of teeth and yanking of hair. But the bottom line is, as they say in Hollywood, all publicity is good publicity. We need the public to know that the ERA is ratified, it's ready, and it needs to be published. So that's the first good news. The second good news is that President Biden, who is the target, okay, just to be very super crystal clear, the target is the president to tell the archivist to publish the Equal Rights Amendment. He, for the first time, really ever since I remember, mentioned the ERA and the possibility that he could, quote, get it done. So that means that he is kind of considering it. Whether he's going to do it or not, we don't know. But we do know that our efforts are having an effect. And if we continue and ramp up what we're doing so that there's no room for him to wiggle out of it, he may, in fact, do it. And that's what we're counting on. We have 30 days left. So to start off, I just want to talk a little bit about the ground game, about the activism, about the ongoing efforts right here in Washington, D.C. And let's start with Kati telling us a bit about what's been going on and what's going to be going on for the next 30 days.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Kamala. And thanks for putting this together. And thanks everybody for giving your personal time to come and get updated. We've been up here since about a week after the election. We graffitied the RV and set up a headquarters and just moved on up. And we didn't have a plan, obviously, that fast, but we knew we wanted to hold the space and just get here. And a few weeks in, I would say that it is effective. It is making noise. When we talk on occasion to people who are working inside congressional offices, we don't spend a lot of time in that direction because there's really no action that's going to happen in Congress. But every now and then when we end up talking to somebody, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I saw your van," or "Oh yeah, I've seen your people." So we know that they know that we are here. And we are going to make sure that we keep making noise as much as we can. On December 10th, we had a great action. We called it Relay for Rights, and we took a copy of the Constitution, and the kids kicked it off on the front end, kind of right where the White House intersects with Constitution Avenue. And we took that copy of the Constitution all the way down 6.5 city blocks down to the archives to show just how close we are. And so we have to keep doing things. Some of it is here in the streets, but some of it is also in your feeds. I'm sure that everybody in attendance today is noticing not just an uptick in the traditional media, but a huge uptick in what I'm seeing in my feeds. We're seeing a lot of these kind of thought leaders in other political spaces talking a lot about the Equal Rights Amendment. I know that a few key people that I know are really excited that there's an account called Mueller she wrote, and she is talking about the ERA and encouraging people to call and write Biden. So that's the good news. Obviously, we're up against a lot, and we've always said in Virginia, you have two wars that you're fighting at the same time. One is with the antis, and one is with the allies. And I look forward to talking a little bit more about that tonight.
Oh my God, that is so true and so disturbing. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this, because I think a lot of people don't realize that, Kati. And we are going to bring the effing receipts tonight. So before we get to that, I just want to add that Equal Means Equal has moved our base of operations to Washington, D.C., and we are here on the ground now. We have over 500 large posters, similar to the ones we put up in West Hollywood, which are community members holding a phone, basically saying Biden published the ERA. We have 250 large letters that say, make the call, publish the Equal Rights Amendment. And we also have 5 20-foot large banners exhorting the president to make the call. We have over 2,000 postcard handouts and some very exciting ideas for political theater that you can get involved with. We've taken up the Dune sisterhood motif. I don't know how many of you all are watching Dune Prophecy, but oh my God, it's so good. And they look really scary. So I've got a huge black hat. And today we walked from here to the Alice Paul House yelling at the archivist in the voice. So it was quite exciting. And if you want to be a part of any of the next 30 days of action, please reach out to me at info@equalmeansequal.org. We have decided that our first big on the ground sort of massive event will take place on December 28th to sort of call attention to the ERA being the 28th Amendment. And it's going to be at the National Archives at 9:30 in the morning. We are aiming for 500 people there. We have press lined up should we be able to make it big. And Michael Moore is going to give us a statement about it and some cheerleading. And so I really hope that anybody listening to this that can show up on December 28th, which is a Saturday, at 9:30 in the morning, because the National Archives is open on a Saturday, please do so. Okay, now I'm going to come to the slightly less good news. And I don't want to call it bad news because we are pushing back against it and we're gaining traction. But I do want you all to know and understand what we're up against. As Kati mentioned, it isn't just the anti-equality usual players like the Attorney General of Alabama, who we know hates us and women, etc. But it is some very long-standing, credible feminist organizations and feminist influencers who are presently fighting tooth and nail behind the scenes to torpedo our efforts to get Biden to publish the ERA. I'm ultimately going to turn it over to the lawyers to go into depth on where we are with the ERA in reality, right? Not the spin. And we're going to end with answering your questions. So right now, I'm going to ask you all to put your questions into the Q&A and throughout the web, and you can do it all the way until I turn this over to Arlaine and Wendy, and I'll make sure that we answer all your questions. So, and this is controversial, and people don't like it when women come out and say something against other women, especially in the space of feminism and organizing. But I think to continue to allow this to go on in the shadows is actually to enable it. And that's not equality. If we have bad actors that are women, we need to attack them equally. And we're about to do that tonight. I'm going to start by letting you know that we found out through multiple sources that the ERA coalition convened a private meeting without telling their board, without telling their members, at the behest, in my opinion, I don't have evidence that it is at the behest, but all evidence points to Eleanor Smeal, president of the feminist majority, for inciting this convening to gather together a group of quote unquote legal scholars to discuss the viability of ERA publication with the goal, believe it or not, of finding those that would say that Biden should not publish the ERA. That's really sad. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. These people, and I'm going to include Congresswoman Maloney in this in a minute, but these people, Ellie Smeal, the ERA Coalition, Maloney, these people that are at the front of the establishment movement for the Equal Rights Amendment are presently and actively, covertly sabotaging the Equal Rights Amendment by trying to find half-baked, very poor, very easily dismissible reasons why Biden should not publish the Equal Rights Amendment. The list of people that were at that meeting included constitutional scholar Lawrence Tribe, Ellie Smeal, Kathy Spillar, who's in charge of Miss Magazine, who's put out 3 hit pieces in the past week and a half trying to torpedo ERA publication. Ms. effing Magazine, people, all right? Kathleen Sullivan, Victoria Norse, Catherine Franke, Russ Feingold, Zakiya Thomas, Bettina Hager, Jennifer Tucker, and Linda Coberly herself. There may have been others, but those are the ones that I am positive were there. I'm also want to be very clear that all those people named are not against the publication of the Equal Rights Amendment, although the feminist majority is purporting that they are, is deliberately saying that they are against publication. And I have spoken directly to 2 of them and heard directly from another three. I have talked to 3 of these people, and they are saying that they never said that they do not believe that. Okay, so we have the feminist majority, which I would like to read that because that is really effing charming. The feminist majority sent out an email to multiple influential individuals across the country. I received this from somebody. I'm not going to divulge the source, but this is a major organization, the president of a major women's organization, not ERA, even larger. I'll let you guess. And they were sent an email from the feminist majority that says, quote, "We are adamantly opposed to any effort to have the archivists act to publish the Equal Rights Amendment, even though it has been ratified by the requisite number of states. We have been pushing the joint resolutions in Congress to have a vote to recognize that the ERA has been ratified, notwithstanding the time limit in the preamble proposing whereas clauses of the ERA when passed by Congress in 1972. That is shocking, folks. Then this statement, which is a flat out 100% lie. This is the consensus of leading constitutional scholars. It's not the consensus. I've talked to these people. They don't all agree at all. And many of the people that Ellie Smeal is saying are opposed to certification told me to my face that they are not. So Ellie Smeal, stop your lying lies. How about that? Second thing, Ellie Smeal took Lawrence Tribe with her to meet with the White House Gender Policy Council to try and convince them not to publish the ERA. Just let that sink in. This is a traitor. Okay, this is quote unquote the consensus of leading constitutional legal scholars. Please, this is lies. It is highly questionable whether Biden has the authority to order the archivist to publish. Really? And whether even if the archivists publish, that would make the ERA a part of the Constitution. Highly questionable to who? Alabama Attorney General? Maybe. Based on the precedent of the 14th Amendment and what the court says in Coleman v. Miller, a joint congressional resolution would make the ERA part of the Constitution, although that obviously will not happen in the next 2 years. Look, these people are so far in the congressional tank that they're drowning in it. We have sat through congressional bullshit, for what, 15 years now? We're going to go, how dumb do they think we are? How many votes do they think they're going to squeeze out of us? They deliberately lost Dobbs so they could squeeze votes out of us. Now they're deliberately not publishing, telling us to wait to the midterms. It is unconscionable. If the archivist published, this is their C point. If the archivist publishes the ERA and there is a claim that makes it part of the Constitution, there's certain to be a challenge that will go to the Supreme Court. First of all, that's not certain. But second of all, oh, what? So we just wait till the entire Supreme Court drops dead? What are you saying? And then, of course, there is no way to know what the court will do. It could, one, say that the archivist publication makes the ERA part of the Constitution. It's not likely that they will do that. I mean, these Cassandras are really interesting. They know everything that's going to happen, and it's all bad for us. Unless, of course, it's Congress, then it's great. Two, say that the archivist publication doesn't make it part of the Constitution, but go no further. Or three, say that the archivist publication doesn't make it part of the Constitution and the ERA is dead because of the time lag in publication and the possible recession in the states. All in bold now. The probability is that the court would do the latter, and thus it is too great a risk, and it could kill the ERA entirely for our lifetimes. Not to mention, it would set the ERA up as a target of the Trump administration. You know who's killing the ERA entirely in our lifetimes? It's you, Ellie Smeal, and you, the ERA coalition, and all you traitors. So, being over it. What's even more disturbing is that this individual, who, as I mentioned, is the president of a very large organization, sends this out to all of her contacts saying, hey, all, here's the specific information about ERA passage. There's a distinct possibility that if Biden did this, it would go to the Supreme Court and they would say it wasn't passed by Congress currently and the time has passed and therefore it's null and void. It's too dangerous to go to this route. I've highlighted the really scary parts. This is information from constitutional scholars and the feminist majority, which many of you know have been working on the ERA since 1978. So that is what Ellie Smeal is up to. And let me tell you, this is nothing new. This has been going on for at least 30 effing years. And this is from, I want to read this and then, you know, I may stop, but I want to read this. This is from a 92-year-old activist who was present when the three-state strategy was introduced at the NOW conference, and Ellie Smeal killed it. She has said to my face and to Natalie White's face that she is not pro the three-state strategy, that we needed to stop. We needed to back down. We needed to move away from working on the ERA. I don't know who the hell she thinks she is, but I don't take my orders from Ellie Smeal or the feminist majority. I know they take their orders from the DNC that pays them millions of dollars a year to simply squeeze votes and money out of women, but that's not where Equal Means Equal takes their orders from. This is from the 92-year-old activist, and if you write to me and I get approval from her, I will tell you her name. Dear Ms. Smeal, this is in response to your last 4 letters that use the recent ERA victories to request money. As far as I'm concerned, these letters are fraudulent, and I will never send you a single penny. I was part of the ERA summit that developed the three-state strategy in 1993. Consequently, I am very aware of your efforts to kill this strategy because you want to start over with a more perfect ERA. I attended the 1995 NOW convention in Columbus, Ohio, and watched you use a very questionable parliamentary maneuver to prevent the three-state strategy resolution from being sent to the floor. Then watched as NOW dropped its support for the 1972 ERA and substituted a dippy constitutional equality amendment that included every possible form of discrimination, an amendment that some would call laudable with all its inclusion, but one that clearly would not and did not go anywhere. Therefore, nothing was gained for women. I just want to take an aside and call out now you're part of this cabal of, and I'm not talking about the local chapters because Equal Means Equal works with amazing women in the local chapters of NOW. I'm talking about NOW National. NOW National is part of the team that wants to kill the ERA so they can keep the money rolling in, keep their salaries nice and fat, and get absolutely effing nowhere. After the ERA summit morphed into the ERA campaign network, several members, including Jennifer McLeod of New Jersey, attended a feminist majority convention conference. They were physically banned from distributing three-state strategy literature. In 2015, you, along with Bettina Hager and 3 others, had the audacity to suggest a rewording of Senator Cardin's bill to remove the deadline. This attempt was foiled by Carolyn Cook of United for Equality, but you accomplished your goal of showing division in the drive for the ERA and helped to temporarily cool Cardin's interest in the bill. In 1995, at the NOW convention, I, along with other supporters of the three-state strategy, suggested that NOW adopt a 2-pronged policy toward the ERA. It was voted down. Now you and others have adopted just such a policy. I'm no longer interested in this approach because it is divisive, it makes us look weak, and therefore makes it more difficult to get the 1972 ERA ratified. I am not willing to throw away 95 at the time of this letter, plus years of effort to start over. There are more and more letters like this, and I just want you to understand what we're up against. I want to reiterate that, and I want to mention actually that several of the people at these meetings wrote to me and said, we never said that. We don't agree with that. We do think Biden can publish, including, I would like to read you a statement from Victoria Norris. Do I have that one? Victoria Norris, who I spoke to her chief of staff, or actually, what's the name of her? I spoke to Natalie Demergen Riveset, who's the special assistant and counsel to the vice chair, Victoria Norris, who's on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. She was horrified that her name is being used to suggest that they don't want to, that she doesn't want the ERA published. Hold on one second. I am writing to memorialize our phone call following up on your email to Professor Norris earlier today. In your email, you stated that you have heard from multiple sources that she is urging President Biden not to publish the ERA before he leaves office and is taking active steps to work against those of us working in publications. Any assertions made to this effect are false and misleading. Professor Norris and I, as her representative, have spoken with groups and members of the administration to discuss the certification of the ERA, the matter of certification. While these conversations remain deliberative and pre-decisional, I can share that we have not advocated against certification. So when Ellie Smeal and the Women's ERA Coalition and now and phony baloney Maloney get out there and say that people, all the scholars are against certification, just know it's an effing lie. And why they're doing this, we're going to get to now. We're going to get to, and so I do want to say that I appreciate Linda Coberly writing back to me, because she was asked by the ERA Coalition to put this together, and she did. She gathered all these people, but she also does not take the stance that the ERA should not be certified. She, none of this is happening. For some reason, Ellie Smeal from the feminist majority wants to keep the gravy train going for another 20 years. ERA Coalition told me at one point, we have a 20-year plan. I was like, well, I don't have a 20-year timeline. Anyway. Some people are really confused. Okay, some people are confused. Let's see. With 97 people. Yes, so I want to mention to Carol Stevens, who's a member of AAUW and the League of Women Voters. Yes, the American Association of University Women and the League of Women Voters are allies. So is the American Bar Association. So is the American Constitution Society. So are the National Women's Lawyers Association. There are multiple extremely credible groups that absolutely concur that Biden can and should publish. It's just the ones that I'm mentioning right now that for some reason, and it has to do with Congress and the Democratic Party and whatever the hell, and I let, Arlaine and Wendy take that up a little bit, why they're doing this. But those other groups that are able to see the truth do not agree. They do not agree. Okay. Okay, so the first question is, thank you, Cheryl Krim. You're willing to help in any way possible, leaving the country for New Year's. So on the 28th, if you could shoot that action for us, come down to the archives and film it, that would be great. Catherine Evangelista, what actual leverage do we have to get Biden to publish? I think the power of the people is very strong. Wendy's going to talk about that. Will a government shutdown stop ERA publication? That's Joel Marshall. I'm going to let the lawyers take that. Catherine said, what is their motivation to sabotage Biden's publication? Who are the traitors? ERA Coalition and Ellie are the feminist majority, and both they all are traitors. They're all traitors. What is the motivation to tank this? Okay, so first I'm going to invite Wendy to make a 3-minute opening statement. And then I'm going to ask Arlaine to make a 3-minute opening statement, and then we're going to go to the questions. So Wendy, please unmute your.
Okay, I'm going to add a few things before I make my statement. So give me a little leverage, a little leeway on the 3 minutes, because I want to comment on a couple of things you said. First, to respond to that last question, what's our best leverage? Our best leverage disappeared on election day. What we could have and should have done is mobilized, united, leveraged our votes, that we would vote for Kamala Harris if Biden published. And I think she would be president today, president-elect, if we had done that. We didn't. This was the genius of Alice Paul and the Women's Party. They always leveraged their votes. They stayed nonpartisan. They held both sides accountable, and it was genius. And it's one of the reasons the Women's Party had to be dissolved. They were far too powerful. But I want to just point that out. It's important that we know the power of our vote is enormous, because we have half the population, more, 170 million votes. If we actually mobilized, united as women, and used our power, we would run this country. So I just want to say that. I want you also to know that I'm the one who handed Ellie that 92-year-old ERA activist letter. It was at the Women's Party where Cami and everybody is this week at the headquarters. This was a bunch of years ago.
Wendy, we can't hear you. Got to yell.
Oh, sorry. Hang on.
Just speak really loud.
I'll come closer. Is that better? Is that a little better? I might have to get my earphones in. I wanted to just emphasize that I was the person who handed that letter that Kamala read, that the 92-year-old ERA activist wrote to Ellie Smeal. I personally handed it to Ellie Smeal at the National Women's Party headquarters many years ago, before Virginia ratified, because we were anticipating litigation the minute Virginia did vote. And she wanted me to let Ellie know that she had these sentiments to share. Well, Ellie was on the stage with me. We both presented to an audience of women who cared deeply about the ERA at this event. And I gave my talk about why the deadline is not valid, what we were going to be doing in litigation after Virginia ratified. Ellie stood up after I was done and said, I agree with Wendy. Publication is going to happen and this and that. I mean, she was totally on board with what I said. And then she said to the audience, and as soon as Virginia ratifies, I have teams of lawyers and constitutional law firms across the country, and they are all ready to go to court and fight in the courts to get the ERA validated. Well, guess what happened? Of course, she, I'm sure, raised a lot of money that night, telling people she needed money to be able to go to all of those quote unquote law firms that she said she had lined up. But when Virginia ratified, and I did file suit as I promised I would, Ellie did nothing. Absolutely nothing. There were no teams of lawyers lined up.
She did worse, Wendy. She did worse. She blocked people from signing on to our lawsuit.
And I was going to add that as well, but I just want you to know that was a lie to the audience to raise money for herself and for the feminist majority. But in fact, she worked against us. It was a lie. It's been recorded. If you don't believe me, I'll share the recording with you. I want you to know about that. I also want you to know that I have a recent law review article where I put a lot of the stuff Kamala talked about in terms of who the traitors are. I have 400 footnotes in there. It's all citations. It's supported. I'll give it to you for free. I'll even post the link. I don't know how to do that, but I'll have somebody post the link in the chat.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay, but I haven't even begun. Can I please have 2 more minutes?
2 more.
Okay. Under the law, 106B, the archivist must forthwith cause an amendment to be published whenever notice is received that an amendment has been adopted under the conditions set forth in Article 5. Article 5 in turn states an amendment has been adopted when just 2 things have occurred: agreement by 2/3 of Congress, ratification by 3/4 of the states. That's it. In January 2020, the ERA was adopted in compliance with Article 5, which means the archivist was mandated to forthwith put it in the Constitution. It did not happen. We've been fighting for 5 years ever since to get it to happen. A little background on the duplicitous archivist for a minute and how their position has changed dramatically. In 2012, the archivist issued a public statement declaring that he would put the ERA in the Constitution if 3 more states ratified it, regardless of the deadline. He said this because that's the law. He has no discretion not to publish. If there's a controversy about an amendment, the courts figure it out after publication. That's the law. The 2012 letter is why women worked so hard to get 3 more states to ratify, led by Equal Means Equal and Kamala Lopez. We got Nevada in 2017, Illinois in 2018, Virginia in 2020. But guess what happened? The archivist reneged and said, sorry, I changed my mind. Instead of just obeying the law and publishing, I decided not to publish because of the deadline. Okay, so instead of obeying the law, I'm going to disobey the law, and I'm going to refuse to publish unless a court order issues telling me to publish. Okay, so what did we do? We went to court. We filed lawsuits in 2020 to force the archivist to publish. They were resolved on procedural grounds, which is to say they were dismissed, but the court left us in limbo about the deadline. Over the next few years, some advocates said, oh, let's go to Congress. We should get Congress involved. They can pass some resolutions and remove the deadline or declare the ERA valid despite the deadline. Well, you know what? Most ERA advocates thought that wasn't legitimate. And we kept pushing for publication because Congress cannot pass a resolution without constitutional authority, and nothing in the Constitution or Supreme Court case law gives Congress authority to either remove the deadline or declare the ERA valid. And
that's 2 minutes.
Can I please have a couple more?
No, you'll get to it in a second. Let's get Arlaine's opening statement. And I see a lot of people are just going, but why? Okay, Arlaine, your opening statement. You're muted, Arlaine.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Arlaine Rockey, and I've been working on trying to get the ERA published since I was asked to represent up at the final count was 86 groups of friends of the court, and those groups added up to over 1 million people. It was people like SAG-AFTRA, it was the Teamsters Human Rights Committee, it was the Niskanen Center, and I had 2 other lawyers working with me, Gina Callias and Pamela Parker, and we wrote a brief that was why the ERA is important for democracy. And that's something that's very important today because we are at risk of losing our democracy. And we have all these laws all over the country stopping women from being able to get health care that they need. And women are dying. And I'm telling you this, and we can get into it later, but Biden has fiddled while women have died. Biden had the chance to stop Dobbs. He knew because I wrote to his White House counsel and told them that he had what he has today, which is the Article 2, which is the powers for all the presidents, Article 2 of the Constitution, is Section 3, which says that the president has a duty to take care that all the laws, he has to faithfully make sure that all the laws are executed, which means carried out. And so the law, this is why when people say he doesn't have the right to publish the ERA, this is not going through Article 5, the regular way. What this is that there's the law that they've been talking about, which is 1 U.S. Code 106B, and it says that the archivist shall publish forthwith when they get the notice that 3/4 of the states have ratified. And he has to enforce that law, and it is a mandatory duty. He could be impeached, for not doing this, but not that the Democrats would impeach him, not that even the Republicans were trying to impeach him. And the only impeachable act he had done was his inaction, because inaction is an action, of not publishing and calling the archivist and telling her to publish the ERA. He has the right under the Take Care Clause to call up the archivist and say, you need to follow this law. So I don't know if I've done 3 minutes already or not.
Okay, I think we want to start, and Arlaine, since you're up, why don't we just start by trying to answer the question that we're getting repeatedly from people, which is why are these women's organizations, these top organizations, working against publication? And then Wendy, I'd like you to also weigh in on that question.
Okay. So what I believe is that they have been doing what exactly Biden did, is that they are looking for raising money. And for Biden, right after Dobbs came out, even though he knew he could have stopped it, he had the last clear chance to stop Dobbs, to protect Roe, because based on the Equal Rights Amendment, we have a right for a fundamental right to abortion, and we have just by the textual basis. So everything Alito put in Dobbs that he said did not exist in the Constitution, it actually existed in the Constitution at that time. And because Biden didn't put public notice by publication, it didn't happen. And so what did Biden do right after that? He used the demise of women's rights for fear, to get people who were so afraid, and had them vote Democrats, and the Democrats were all for this, and also to give money. And what did he do in his campaign? The same thing. He came out and used gay rights and women's rights in his first video for announcing that he was running for re-election. And so that is the reason. It comes down to money, in my opinion, and votes.
Wendy, what is your opinion about why these women's organizations are fighting against us covertly, and they act like they're all for it, but then behind the scenes they're having these secret meetings and doing all this sabotage?
It is not at all unusual in social movements for groups to be propped up for the purpose of working against the interest of the group they purport to represent, and to receive dollars for the purpose of managing the complacency of that group and misleading and distracting resources to get the group focused on things other than, in this case, for example, the ERA. Think about this. In 1966, as the Women's Party led by Alice Paul was very much on the fast track to getting the ERA through Congress without a deadline, the National Organization for Women was founded in 1966, and in its first order of business, and at a national meeting of all the women's rights leaders, they announced that they would not be supporting the ERA. I mean, that is pretty fucked up. When you go to a meeting of women's rights advocates who are desperately fighting for equality, and you announce that you are the new group, National Organization for Women, and you're going to be opposing the ERA, that really knocked a lot of people's socks off. But it was pretty clear from that moment on that there would be enormous amounts of money paid to groups that would hold themselves up, and Feminist Majority is part of this. They would hold them. ACLU is certainly a huge anti-feminist, also big money organization that works against women's equality. This is the way to inhibit women's success at achieving equality without creating the appearance of being opposed, right? You can't openly say, I'm opposed to women's equality, but if you take a lot of money and you distract women into fighting for other things so that they no longer focus on equality, they kind of forget that there ever was an ERA. That's why so many people today don't even know about the ERA, much less what does it do? What? I thought that passed 40 years ago. So many people don't know because of those very well-funded corrupt organizations that are taking money for the purpose of keeping the public distracted. We're seeing that in a micro sense right now with the ERA playing itself out.
What about this? Why is the focus on congressional action by the ERA coalition and all these other groups? Why is that sabotage? Can you explain that?
Yes. Well, there are actually two really good answers to that. One, I'm running out of my battery. One is that...
And you have to speak up.
One is that getting everybody focused on Congress is the only way to make themselves feel legitimate, like they're actually focused on getting something done. So if they focus on Congress, then they sound like they actually care about the ERA, even though they know Congress has no authority to act. Congress has no constitutional authority, no case law authority to remove the deadline, to declare the ERA valid. They have no authority. I've heard only one person suggest the possible source of authority, the Coleman case from 1939. That says Congress can remove the deadline. That's a bullshit statement. Coleman says one thing. Congress can declare whether an amendment is valid, that is, did too much time pass from congressional proposal to state ratification, when there is no deadline. If there is a deadline, Congress has no power to act. So when these groups say, oh, let's focus on Congress, Arlaine is exactly right. What they're saying is, let's waste all of the women's rights money in this country, and there's a lot of it. Let's waste it trying to put Democrats in Congress, because you never know, maybe they'll pass this law. Guess what will happen? If Congress dared pass a law removing the deadline, that case would go so fast into a courtroom, a judge would say, nice try. Congress has no authority to remove the deadline. And because Congress took steps to remove the deadline, that creates the presumptive validity of the deadline to begin with, because you don't have to remove that which is invalid. We've been arguing since day one it's not valid. If it's not valid, you don't have to remove it. You just get it adjudicated unconstitutional in the courts. And everyone in this business knows what I just said is correct. The people who are pushing for Congress are the corrupt, absolutely anti-feminist snakes that are trying to destroy the ERA by making us go in the wrong direction time and time and time again.
It's so disgraceful, because what it does is you have women spending hours and months and years focusing on Congress, when Biden's lawyers in court, in our case, said the role of Congress is over. The archivist says there is no role for Congress. Everybody recognizes that it's a boondoggle, but you know what? It gets these Congress people and these senators in the news, and that gets them visibility, and then they can get more money, and then they can get themselves elected. Okay, let's see. Another question. Joel was asking whether the government shutdown is going to possibly have an effect on the timeline of how quickly we need Biden to publish or direct the archivist to publish, especially if the archivist is going to resist publication. NARA just put out a statement saying they would not publish. So what if the president orders the archivist to publish and she says no?
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we're being set up to watch right now. The reason the archivist said preemptively, and by the way, this is a different statement from the one we got in 2020. Remember, I said the archivist has changed their view 3 times. In 2012, they said, all we need is 38 states and we publish. We have no discretion to do anything else. In 2020, they said, oops, we made a mistake. We actually need a court order. This week, they said, oh, well, you know, we'll take either a court order or an act of Congress. What the fuck? Who does that? What makes the archivists think they can even send an opinion letter out declaring what they need to do a ministerial act? This is a goddamn librarian we're talking about. A librarian has no business analyzing the Constitution, no authority to determine what the Constitution needs. This is an obscenity. The archivist changing the rules as we go. This is like the Wizard of Oz. You bring the broom, there's another requirement. No, absolutely not. So what I think we're seeing is the archivist saying, I'm not doing it without an act of Congress or a court order. Therefore, if Biden, the day before his last day in office, declares from Washington, D.C., I now want the archivist to publish, and she says in response, well, but you know, I already told you I'm not going to do it. Guess what? Biden can that day fire her, literally remove her from office. That's the authority he has under what Arlaine described as the take care clause. He can fire her that day, but she then gets to go to court, and he'll be out of office before the judge rules. That'll be convenient.
So what is the fastest way to win? Is it to have Biden direct the archivist to publish, or is it to have Biden simply say the Equal Rights Amendment is the 28th Amendment and must be adopted and enforced?
Both. I think he should order her to publish, because he has the power to do that as chief executive. Remember, the executive branch is the branch that enforces laws. That means he can tell other federal, what are called United States officials or officials of the United States. He has authority to say, do your damn job, obey the law. And if you don't, I will fire you. He has the power to do it. So if he tells her to do it and she says, screw you, I won't do it without a court order, then we go to court. Go to court. Whether he fires her or not, I believe we have some authority to go to court. There might be some interesting legal questions about whether he has to fire her first. Politically, it's very challenging for a president to fire the archivist under these conditions, but let him tell her to do it. Let her declare she refuses. Let's go to court. I've heard more people say, oh, we can't go to court because too many Trump judges will be there and rule against us. Let's talk about who ruled against us so far in court and stop talking about this being a left-right issue for a change. The judge I sued with, Massachusetts federal court, on behalf of Equal Means Equal in January 22, was a Black female liberal Obama nominee. She ruled against us. Who did the DC court get when the last 3 states to ratify filed the very same lawsuit, making the very same arguments I made? When they filed after us and filed in the DC district court, the federal court there, they got a Puerto Rican liberal Obama nominee judge. Guess what? He screwed us. And guess who was the first person out of the gate after Virginia ratified, making a declaration in Washington, D.C. that the ERA was dead and the deadline was valid? Who was that? Trump judge? That was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So can we stop talking about this as a left-right issue and start talking about it as a matter for political uprising by all women on all sides of the aisle? We must unite across party lines. Do not get sucked into the idea that this is a red versus blue issue. It is not. When we come together, when we rise up and make it clear that we will not vote for anyone who doesn't do the right thing on the ERA, that's how it's going to get into the Constitution. We need to take a lesson from Black Lives Matter. Rise up in unity against both parties until this gets done.
I agree with that. Arlaine, do you want to chime in on this?
Not that one. I'm good. She's
Okay.
She's done a great job.
Yeah, I think so now let's just review any other questions that we've received. Jerry Burton asks, doesn't Shogun's husband work for a nonprofit funded by the Koch brothers? That's interesting because she was appointed by by Biden, correct?
I believe that's correct. She was really grilled in her hearing too, because they were trying to get her to say she wasn't going to publish. And I didn't even know about her husband at that point. But I want to say one of the things that I don't have in writing, well, we kind of have it in writing, but one of the things that I've heard in some of our meetings recently is that the archivist probably, and I believe it, the archivist probably would have not put out that statement unless she had cleared it with the White House. So I do think that Ellie Smeel going to the White House and talking to the General Policy Council, that has had an effect. And apparently also Ellie is buddies with Biden. So she could probably pick up the phone and call Biden, just like he needs to pick up the phone and call the archivist and tell her to publish.
So I think, yeah, one of our targets, aside from Biden, has to be Ellie Smeel. We have to make very clear to the public that Ellie Smeel is a traitor, that she is fighting to sabotage the Equal Rights Amendment, that she is going behind the backs of all the women that she represents. By the way, the feminist majority broke the back of the union a couple of years ago when they were trying to unionize in New York at the feminist majority. So that's just another little tidbit. Jerry Burton says, could it be Biden telling the archivist that she won't publish because he's been convinced by Ellie that it needs to be Congress that needs to remove the deadline, so he isn't the one looking bad? Absolutely. All of these people are giving Biden cover to do what he really wants to do, which is torpedo the Equal Rights Amendment. He just doesn't want to look like he's doing it, but he absolutely is doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, both parties are the enemies of women. Absolutely. I agree with that. Cassandra Rose says ERA Coalition and Glass Ceiling, good guys or bad. Shattering Glass is Nicole Bates' organization, and they are fighting very, very hard for ERA publication. So they are definitely good guys. They're the ones that found out, along with Kate Kelly, that Ellie Smeal had gotten into the White House with Lawrence Tribe. I'll let Wendy take that any further if she wants to.
Well, the only thing I'll say is, and a lot of people already know this, when I was a visiting scholar at Harvard Law School, I worked alongside Larry Tribe, and I've worked with him over the years on various initiatives. He's very bright. I don't think anybody knows him would deny that. He's an incredible scholar. He's just flip-flopped on this issue, and he's been, I think, intellectually dishonest in his remarks about the chief executive, President Biden, not having authority to tell the archivist to follow the law. He's wrong on that. And, we do not bow down in obsequious submission just because someone calls themselves a constitutional scholar. There's a truth here. And the truth is that getting this done is largely a political issue. And I don't mean political branch. I don't mean we need Congress. I mean political in the sense that if any branch of government has the authority to help us and they don't, it's because we have not made it clear to them that it will be uncomfortable and unpleasant and painful if they don't do the right thing. We have not done a good enough job making clear that it is unacceptable. Period. End of discussion. And we're not going to be nice. We're not going to wait 20 years. We're not going to go like stupid lemmings to Congress and give all our money to the Democrats and hope they pass a law that we know is going to be overruled as unconstitutional by the courts the minute the ink is dry. We are not stupid people. What we are is disorganized. What we are is divided, and we're divided by enormously wealthy, quote unquote, women's organizations that have never had women's equality as their core purpose. Never. We haven't had that since Alice Paul and the National Women's Party, and we need that back. And Equal Means Equal is that organization. We all have to decide now to give up the left-right nonsense. It's not working. It's never worked. Alice understood that. She would criticize the Democrats as much as the Republicans because she wasn't a pawn. And she was very bright. And if we haven't learned that from her yet, then we deserve the shit we're in. I don't even want to talk about how unbelievably uneducated our population is. We don't learn anything about women's inequality from kindergarten through graduate school. How is that possible? How is it possible that we can enslave half the population in this country in second-class citizenship and not teach that to anybody ever? This is a problem.
I have a quick question. I was led to believe that if an issue is deemed political, and by that, if there have been hearings, if the Congress is debating it, that then it's not allowed for the Supreme Court to take it up.
Bullshit. Bullshit. You can't just declare something political because Congress stuck its nose in. If Congress doesn't have authority to act, it is per se not a political question in terms of the issue that you just mentioned, Cam. And again, I mean the difference between not political, like rise up and be politically active, but political meaning the political branch of government, i.e. Congress, gets to decide. Congress has no authority to act at this point, period. The judicial branch always has authority to act when the question is, what does the Constitution mean? Is the Constitution amended? That is the quintessential question for the judicial branch. Of course, the courts are the ones that have to decide. Are the courts going to bend over and say, well, since Congress told us it was valid, we think we'll defer to them? That would be like the courts giving up enormous power and letting Congress suddenly be the ones that decide what the Constitution means and when it's public. No. The courts will never defer to Congress to be the ones that decide whether the Constitution has been amended. And by the way, The DC court all but said exactly that. Although it was a decision on procedural grounds, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, the second highest court in the land under the Supreme Court of the United States, said, of course, this is a judicial question. It's not a question for Congress. Nobody thinks Congress has authority to act. The only citation I've heard from these nuts who are telling us to go to Congress, which by the way includes Carolyn Maloney, who until yesterday was on our side. Now suddenly she thinks Congress has to act. Excuse me? The only basis for anybody saying anything about Congress having authority to act is the Coleman decision from 1939. It was a highly fractured decision, which is to say it's not even a stable ruling, but the small piece of Coleman that speaks to congressional ability to do anything with a constitutional amendment says explicitly the only time it's a political question, which is to say Congress can speak, is if the amendment has no deadline. We don't have that situation. The ERA has a deadline. You cannot argue Coleman works here. It doesn't. No law authorizes Congress to act, and we are not going to piss our money away on Congress for the next 20 years, hoping they get around to passing an unconstitutional law that will then truly kill the ERA. You know, I don't mind losing right now. If we get publication done, we end up in court and some judge rules against us, liberal or conservative, at least we'll have a decision that might actually ignite a movement, because some court somewhere will say women aren't equal, the ERA is dead. Boom, we rise up. At least we have some consciousness.
But Wendy, what they do and what they've done to us twice now is say we have no standing to bring the case.
Yes, well, that's a different issue. Finding the right case to bring where you get a court to rule is a different issue. What I'm saying is everyone says, who's been opposed to publication over the past couple of weeks now, oh, we don't want to lose in front of a Trump appointed judge, as if a Trump appointed judge would rule against us, but an Obama appointed judge wouldn't, and we've already lost in front of two. Different issue. My point is, you can't be afraid of losing in the courts, because they are going to have the final say regardless, whether it's today or 20 years from now. They will have the final say. Let's get to it. The worst that happens is we fight like hell. We show up in very large numbers at the courthouse. We make it clear to the judge in that building, don't you dare rule against us, because bad things will happen. And I don't mean violence. I mean bad things politically will happen. We will be furious. But if you do rule against us, we will rise up. That's the benefit of doing this, even if we might lose. All these fraidy cats keep saying, we're afraid. Oh, be very scared. You read the letter when we started this. Here's the scary part. What the fuck are you afraid of at this point? We haven't had equality in over 100 years. What are you afraid of? Women are dying in very large numbers. They're being raped, beaten, and killed because they don't have equal protection of any laws, including laws against rape, abuse, and femicide. And you're afraid of going to court? Well, then you deserve to suffer. I don't feel afraid of going to court. No one should. And if we rise up and fight outside the courthouse and inside the courthouse, we have a better chance of winning.
Well, I want to bring this back to
can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to say that I have a different perspective on what Biden's powers are, because, and people don't want to hear this, but the Trump v. U.S. case, where everybody calls it the Trump immunity case, it actually went back into history for their originalist perspective. And it says that when a president uses their Article 2 powers, which is what the Take Care Clause is, that their discretion, their decision making, that it cannot be questioned by a court. It says in that case, no court can control the president's discretion when he's using those powers. And I think that helps us, because one, it means that if he's making a decision to call the archivist and say, follow the law, the 106B law, he's saying that that he has decided in his discretion that the deadline is irrelevant. And he's also decided that the rescission states, which have never been accepted throughout history, that it also, those are not relevant. They're not important. And so I feel like that helps us, because stop that power.
All right. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. We're about 5 minutes over time. I just want to reiterate that we are all going to be meeting outside the National Archives on the 28th, Saturday, December 28th at 9:30 in the morning. We have enough signs, posters, banners, and postcards for all of you. If we can muster a strong number, like Wendy is alluding to, we need strong numbers of people to show up. If we can do that, I think that we're organizing press to show up. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want this to drag on. Like my husband Joel said, how long are we going to be doing the same things over and over? Not only are we fighting the clear enemies, now we're fighting covert enemies, we're fighting friends. We need this to end in the next 30 days. We need Biden to publish the Equal Rights Amendment in the next 30 days. And all signs show that if we put the heat on him, he will do it. So let's put the heat on. Let's show up outside the National Archives on the 28th and then show up. We will be organized by that point and tell you what the next steps are. Thank you so much for participating today. This was a great meeting. I think that I'd love everybody to let the feminist majority know that we're coming for them, that we know what they're doing. The same goes for National Now. The same goes for ERA Coalition, Carolyn Maloney, and anybody and everybody who is behind the scenes fighting us. We're coming for you, and we're coming from you directly. We're not scared of you. We're not scared to go to court. We're not scared of anything. We just want our equality, and we're going to fight till we get it. Thank you so much. Happy holidays, and I hope to see you again very soon. Please feel to write to me, info@equal means equal. And if you have a spare nickel, send it our way. Every single dollar we get is used to continue this fight. Thank you.